sides are appropriate, and help with some things as an advocate for those that want to make this personal choice, instead of standing in the way of freedom. I see it as.
Certainly.
So does that mean that you talk about taking away some of the federal involvement and giving it to the states, but would you also be a proponent of complete decriminalization by the federal government?
I'm not sure what complete decriminalization would look like, because I can imagine that there are situations where it's problematic. But but I like where you guys are going. I really like the idea that we're going to regulate marijuana like alcohol, which is a complete decriminalization of this, because it's instead going to be treated in a similar fashion, which I think is quite appropriate given the science on cannabis, and so public policy should follow science. So, yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by complete decriminalization.
Well, one of the ways is to, because we've seen this, and it's really one of the. We see how important the Attorney General's position can be in that they dictate government policy regarding some of these things, and if you get a lot of antagonism, a lot of expectations, or letdowns of expectations of the protections the card may provide, or whatever the law says it's supposed to provide, if the law enforcement community is not properly educated. And so in other words, even if there's some method of decriminalization and you leave the discretion to and I'm not saying it's not there's no blame intent. I just think that's unless it's either off limits or it's not. There's a certain level of discretion that sometimes goes with it. That like for example, if legalization is a real concept, does that mean that people are going to get arrested if they are buying marijuana from someone they're not allowed to? I mean, you know what I mean? That may not be really legalization. We recognize that, and there's different ways that those issues can be resolved, and I think where a lot of the middle ground is on incrementalization, accept the steps as they come, and we can always fix it later if it's not good enough, and it causes a lot of antagonism within the community. But that's what people mean when they say, so the alternative would be, as Shiler was suggesting, that the Virginia, where it is unscheduling it. So it's no longer, it's illegal. It's a plant, and because it is this particular plant, it is illegal because it's scheduled to Schedule 1, the most dangerous of substances. If it is not that, everything would change. Treat it like a cactus or something, maybe, right?
Sure.
What about that? I mean, so and listen, people, like the example is always the tomatoes. Like, grow tomatoes as many as you want in your backyard, sell them to Heinz, sell them at a farmer's market, eat them for soup in your own house, make your own ketchup, whatever. But it's tomatoes. It's not, and no one should regulate. This is the other idea. So that's the other. And I'm just laying the spectrum out of what I describe as our ununified community. But go ahead. So what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's any basis for marijuana or cannabis to be a Schedule 1 drug. I would support changing that, and that opens up a whole lot of things at a federal level that would be beneficial, including additional science on the topic. But if you're regulating like alcohol, there are parts of it that can become illegal. There's a process whereby it's produced and distributed. And outside of that would be illegal with alcohol, and so too would it be with marijuana. So that means when we sort of decriminalize it, on one hand, that to make it like alcohol, that there are still rules about it. We're still not supposed to go to work, intoxicated or stoned. I think employers should still have some ability to regulate that. Of course, that's
interesting because I know
also medical marijuana and where that comes in. So there's some issues to be worked through, and it can't happen right away. But I think the majority of people want to start working through these issues.
Well, that's very interesting. I think sometimes the more interesting conversation is, not is it going to happen, but what does it look like when it happens? And there's a number of different areas that there are unknowns about. All the way. And I think you just hit on one that I always think is very important. And we're lucky enough because you are a labor lawyer in your specialties in employment stuff, and you did make reference to that. Maybe tell people it'd be a good time to explain what you know, just from a advice.
Casillas v. Walmart.
What?
Casillas v. Walmart.
No, we lost them again.
Warm it up.
We're having network issues.
That time it sounds like you hung up.
No.
Maybe not.
I think it's a Schuyler sabotage.
I'm just.
Everything was fine until Schuyler got here.
We should play. Can we play it?
We better take a break. I mean, we got to figure this out.
Did we figure out my thing, Chad? Yeah. Okay.
He's giving
Let's take a break.
route answers.
We're going to take a quick break.
Quick break.
And then
We were in engineering.
talk a little bit more.
We're going to re-engineer things. It's going to be good.
It's a weird district.
I'll mute. Hold on.
Well, that's the gerrymander district. It came up.
I can't get this open.
covering the crossroads that I'm standing at. Maybe it's the weather or something like that. Mama, you just been on my mind. Well, I don't mean trouble, please. Put me down, don't get upset, I'm not pleading. I'm saying that I can't forget. I don't walk the floor by then and then again. Mama, you just been on my mind. Even though my thoughts are hazy and my dreams in my narrow way, you don't bother me. Bring me down in sorrow. It don't even matter why you're waking up tomorrow. Mama, you just been on my mind.
You guys there?
All right, good. I think okay. So, I was excited because this area, and I know some of your background is, I understand you're on the school board and school board or council in Bloomfield Hills or Township.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Served on a Bloomfield Hills School Board for just short of 6 years.
Okay, and I have children within the school district, so and I kind of think, and I sometimes it's. I'd like to take a temperature of what all the parents think on this particular issue, but sometimes it may be taboo, and I recognize as a politician it's hard to really, because there's different people think about it differently, and there's a certain comfort level that people are willing to accept at this stage of things. But I think you raise a particular issue that in 10 years or 15 years, I hope that things are different. Just like the things that we would teach our kids in school about marijuana, right? Like some more truths to it. Did we lose him? God damn. Am I swearing on the air too? Is that happening? Because I lose him. It's not like we're off the air. So all my reactions to not.
I'm moving over to the cell network.
You're still here.
There's a wireless network in this place.
We're going to have to reschedule him now.
Oh my God.
We are. We're going to have to reschedule.
back
We'll
to the
have
music.
him on the same night as Andy. They can debate.
Yeah,
You can like
No.
moderate a debate between the two of them.
that's a good idea.
And we'll
Take
have Ellen on,
questions
the
from
three
our
of them, but
listeners.
we'll do the two of them. Planet Green
All right,
Trees
he's back.
debates hosted by
Oh
the
God, I'm so sorry. I don't know.
League
So,
of Cannabis
You got
Smokers.
to ask quick, like 5-word questions.
all right, 5-word questions. So
Howard's calling
Wha-
in soon.
Please re-enter your show number, followed by the
it's
pound
over.
key.
I'm done.
No,
Can't handle it.
it's good. No, just,
You there? All right.
no, hold on a sec. Just,
You're supposed to re-enter your show number followed by the pound sign.
What? Yeah.
You should.
It's the. I mean, he's bringing up
Bring
the.
notoriety
Just
and
a-
make people think you mean.
I mean,
maybe some people
Michael, we all
actually
know
go
that
with me.
in the next 10 years, it's all going to change.
Oh,
But, like, what does it look like?
Right.
Than Tom Leonard is.
all right, we're on the cell network now, so we'll be.
Now in the host room and can manage your callers from the call-in studio web interface.
Wow. Jeez, he's still trying. He's still trying. He get a lot of votes for his
This is all Chad's fault.
Is he back?
It's Chad's fault.
resilience to want to get his message out. There's got to be credit given here. Seriously.
Is he back?
Oh yeah, here he is now.
Alrighty then.
Hey there.
Truly, because
I hung out.
one of the most important characteristics of any candidate is their
He's
resilience
got my vote
Yeah, I was
just on
gonna
to
the
say-
get their
resilience.
message out. You've called back and enjoyed this.
And we're not going to drop again. We have switched off of
No.
the
All right, don't get-
faulty
Grit,
Chad
determination.
All right, never mind.
car
listen,
wireless.
let him
network.
do this. All right,
Up to a
listen.
bad
So
network.
you are
Going
you're
on it.
you know I was just mentioning the challenges politically, socially, in those various communities. Like the more conservative, I think they I know Bloomfield Hills or Bloomfield Township has a couple, preclusions locally that that I think may even conflict with the state law, but no one's really challenged them, whatever. But and I know the challenge of it. But I was saying, what your message obviously recognizes that this fallacy that it's as dangerous as it is, and it's the threat that it proposes. This is your brain on drugs. Those days are over. I think we all recognize that a more intelligent discussion has to be had about it. And, I think that discussion is much more interesting, especially when we talk about, how are kids going to perceive it. And I'm not saying something we should, in the only topic of things, but clearly that's one of the other parts of the conversation of what that's going to look like in 10 years or 15 years. But in your expertise in employment law, explain to our listeners a little bit about how the law has treated medical marijuana patients, as far as you know, it's state law and federal law, and maybe some suggestions for resolving that moving forward. But before you do that, disclose a little like who you represent. Do you usually represent employers or on the employee side?
It's a great question.
This is Martin again. Yeah, I counsel employers on compliance with the law and trying to do the right thing, which sometimes is not the same thing, right? I get that question all the time. Is it legal? And I say, well, that's not really the right question. It's, what's right, and then we can figure it out whether it's legal. But, yeah, employers are often concerned about this issue, and I was at a Michigan Chamber of Commerce meeting recently, and, of course, they're all, up in arms thinking this would be the worst thing ever. And they think about, well, how what do we do about people at work? And I spoke up there. And I said, well, the same thing with alcohol. People don't come to work, intoxicated, and if they do, you've got a process to evaluate that. Employers still have drug screening programs. And I can remember in the early 90s when I first started working in the labor and employment area, there was a big push by the federal government to make employers sort of do their job for them. Hey, let's make employers screen everybody to find out whether or not they're using drugs during their personal time, and then start blackballing them from work. And there's a lot of that residual sort of mindset that's left amongst employers and advocates for employers have been working in the area since the late 80s.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second, just on that topic, and I realize that this is about safety. You're probably advising employers that have, liability with, their employees, and one of the concerns may be, health insurance or whatever, the laws, whatever. They want everyone to be healthy and whatnot, and